Hi, my name is Mark Lacsamana, and I'm a UX designer. So I currently work for a company called Uploan, and we are a salary advance, or we're basically a financial tech company, and we allow people, or at least companies, to be able to give salary advances and salary loans to their employees. I also currently work as a mentor and coach at a website called Design Lab, where I teach people UI, UX research, and visual design. What is UX? UX basically means user experience. The goal of UX is essentially to be able to design an amazing experience for users, and it doesn't necessarily mean just the visual aspect, but it basically means however you experience a certain product or actually service. So this could even go as far as, let's say, you going to the bank or you going to the hospital. Basically, what we want to do is make an amazing experience for everyone. A good book that actually talks about UX or the origins of UX and what bad UX is this book called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. Norman is the Norman in Norman Nielsen. Don Norman actually coined the term UX way back in late 80s and 90s when he was working for Apple. He actually helped design the first Apple mouse. Not this mouse is bad. But a good example of like bad UX is what's on the cover. This is what he calls the impossible teapot, where you can't exactly hold this teapot. It's designed poorly because you can't really hold it and use it at the same time because the handle is in front where the spout is. Or a good example of bad UX is everybody's probably experienced going into a door or a glass door where because there's just a bar, you don't know if you need to pull or push, and you end up having a problem. That's bad UX because there's bad affordance and you can't really understand whether you're supposed to pull or push. So essentially, these are the things that I actually look at. But these are, this is just a fraction of things that I look at. Some UX designers focus on bigger things such as services and processes. So they're called service designers. And so the whole breadth of UX is actually quite large. People normally think we only look at websites or apps, but we actually take a look at a broad aspect of things. And our field essentially takes a look at a lot more on the psychology and the way and the ergonomics of, and possibly the human computer interactions of the different things that we use every day. It's only in the last couple of years that it's become more digital, actually, or the field has become more digital. At least in the late 90s towards now in the 2000s, it's more UX designers are actually specifically about the digital space. A good example of UX designers actually working beyond the screen and working on things beyond the screen is one of my favorite designers in the world, Dana Schisnell. She actually worked with the U.S. government during the Obama administration to actually redesign their election process and their election forms. Throughout her journey, doing some user research, and she actually was able to find out how and why certain people weren't able to actually found it hard to actually vote in U.S. elections. So things such as the idea of the hanging chad or the problems with understanding the ballot. These are the things that she looks at. So she has a great TED talk called "Democracy is a Design Problem," which I think everyone or every designer who wants to make a great impact on this world should actually listen to. What does a UX designer do? Well, in my case, I tend to not just design things on my computer. I tend to not just like form things around Photoshop or form things around or sketch things out and then form things around Photoshop. I don't want to seem condescending to any visual designer because there's a lot more to design in general than just that. There's a lot more about planning and etc. But I think what makes UX very different is we we tend to do things in a very specific way where we use what you call the human-centered design process or design thinking. where we tend to do a lot of user research and contextification or contextifying the problem first. The main goal here is we basically want to make sure that we are actually solving the right problems so that we don't waste time solving the wrong problems. So a huge chunk of my time actually goes into interviewing users and going and talking to people in coffee shops, for example, to actually understand their experiences with using certain services or certain products. I actually used to work for OLX as well, and this is actually where I learned UX. The main UX designer there, Mika Diaz de Rivera, shout out to him, was very, very good at this actually. He would go to coffee shops, say hello, and talk to people and ask them have they ever used our app, and actually try to understand why they would use certain things, what is the main reason they would do certain things, what do they do afterwards, and why they don't like using our app. The importance of UX at the very least, I think, is if you look at it in the broader aspect that I just mentioned, it is not just about how visually appealing or visually understandable or the message that we convey. A lot of the times when we talk about visual design, the main aspect is to actually be able to make something that actually conveys the right message and that people understand, so that we can actually send the right message and send the right data to people. When it comes to UX, it's essentially the same, but the main thing that we try to measure is people's experiences, and we try to make sure that people have a great, or at least an experience that actually helps their lives. So, example, before this job, I was actually working at Caliber, where our main problem is how to get people to actually find jobs. The importance of UX there becomes very apparent because we try to make sure that everyone is able to find a job quickly, and everybody's able to get a good candidate experience. That way, they're able to stay in their jobs, and they're able to find the right jobs for them that can change their lives. Some of the things, at least some misconceptions or things that a lot of UX designers at least need to learn, at least right now, is there's a lot to UX than just reading the books around UX or watching the talks around UX. There's a lot beyond psychology and beyond human-centered design and beyond computer science and human-computer interaction that you need to actually figure out. Certain things like that I actually think would be beneficial for UX designers is learning a little bit about sociology and anthropology, things, and actually understanding your values within them. Things that I actually at least realize as a UX designer in the Philippines is how privilege plays a big role in how you design things and the things that we design. For example, I applaud Makati actually for being able to disperse their calamity funds through GCash. But what about people who don't have the GCash app and do not have access to GCash and do not have access to internet? Or a bigger example, as we are facing COVID-19 now, a lot of the questions around education come into play, and people are, at least the Department of Education is pushing for online education. But what about people who don't have access to this? These are the things that UX designers need to actually take into consideration and need to design around. How do we make products with these certain constraints, and to actually think beyond our privileges? Because most of us, of course, have our internet, etc. Some tips I would say if you want to get into this field is I would actually highly suggest that you read a lot of the literature online. And I would actually highly suggest that you actually join a lot of the online groups and online communities around it. They are more than willing to help. Even right now, in the middle of a quarantine and a pandemic, people in the UX community hold online events, and they're a great place to learn, and they're a great place to expand your mind. What's also great for you to learn to actually be a better designer is to combine your UX knowledge, things that you learn from, like, let's say, personas, market research, etc., with other things from other fields. It's just, again, I mentioned sociology and anthropology, political science, and political theory, because it actually helps make you a more holistic designer, because you end up designing things with a better understanding of the human people that affects the things that you design. I guess that's all I have to say. You can find me on Twitter at at EMKEY at MK. My personal website is marklacsamana.com. I also have a Facebook page where I post my research findings and my musings called Mark Lacsamana Design Research. So thank you, and I hope you guys are all safe in this quarantine.